if when you're collecting data and for the training purposes, Megan, what do you feel? What is the extent to which FDA is expecting manufacturers then to describe how they have collected the data? Where did they get that data? What type of data have they used for training the models? What is the extent to which the manufacturers have to go here?
Yeah, I think Yvonne's description of the data privacy and security was absolutely that foundation. Um, what the FDA also is looking for, which is similar to what they've always looked for, is what kind of data are you depending on? What are you doing with that data? How are you acting on it? What are your inputs? What are your outputs? And what's the scientific basis for why that data is going to lead to the output? So, in other words, who is it for? Which patients? What are the demographics? What are the characteristics that you're evaluating? And why should we trust the model, the output of the model? So, speaking to the AIML enabled devices. So they're wanting to know that you came by that data legally and appropriately. And then so you've already had to explain that. Now you're having to explain your rationale for what is that model actually based on? They're looking for things like, does it actually apply? What kind of built-in bias might there be? Any kind of aspect? Does it artificially reinforce some kind of discrimination? That's something that's being looked at. And over time, uh, what kind of controls do you have in place to make sure that it continues to work safely and effectively? So,
Mhm.
so they're looking at both that. Did you get that data, accurately? Are you protecting that data? But also, does it even make sense? So increasingly, the FDA with AIML is starting to ask for clinical evidence to justify that particular model's behavior. And that is, I think, new. If you're used to doing software as a medical device, or maybe SAMD, and maybe you're coming from the class 2 world where some of these products um, are, are, are living right now, all of a sudden now you're having to think about clinical evidence. So that is something very new and emerging that I've seen with AIM and ML enabled devices.
Yeah, I actually want to pick on one of the things you said now about when you continuously develop the AI models, and we have talked of data drift. So what is happening there? I mean, over time the models are changing, and the data may change in the models that you're using. How can you then ensure that everything is still okay? What kind of monitoring systems is expected to be put in place by FDA, well, from the FDA by the manufacturers?
Sure. So the FDA is requiring the same type of monitoring or surveillance depending on the classification of your device that they always have. Right now, the FDA has authorized, like, I think over 1,000 AI enabled devices. And that data, if you look at their website, that data goes back to like 1995. But as of like September, uh, and then I haven't seen any Gen AI devices yet. I'm sure that they are still in the life cycle. I'm sure the FDA has seen them, but I haven't seen any that have been cleared. So the importance there is that you're still releasing a version of your model, and then you freeze it essentially, and
Mhm.
you are monitoring its use just like before. So you're going to want to use tools and methodologies to look for things like drift, just like you would for any kind of AI ML model, and then look at complaints and make sure it's still performing within its specification. You want to make sure you want to be watching out for new uses or unintended use, just like you always would have done for any medical device.
Mhm.
What is new and emerging beyond that is really and what the FDA is really looking at, and I put shared some links with the Digital Health Advisory Committee, is they're starting to look at how do we regulate Gen AI. So that's where it's actually changing a little bit more in real time beyond from where the current practice is. And they've started to implement certain frameworks like the predetermined change control process or a predetermined change control plan, and different things to start looking at more of what I would consider kind of this a very highly iterative process, right? So maybe you're employing more of a DevSecOps model once you have released that AI/ML. So that's something that you're changing very quickly. But that's the shift that's been needing to happen, that the FDA has been looking at, is how can we actually provide a regulatory framework that enables that innovation and allows for that change, because that is a best practice for software in general. You want to be able to respond to changes, but you also want to be able to make sure that the changes don't adversely affect it. And so all of that, what I am seeing is quite a bit going back to the academic world of we're still developing techniques for how to do that. What are even the metrics? So increasingly, and what are the tools that we can use to make this easier? So that's the kind of that shift. And one of the reasons why the FDA has released so many different guidances.